Welcome everybody to the discussion of the freakdom of everything. We're going to spend some time and talk about the concepts of how to think like a freak. So the inspiration for this discussion is a book, oddly enough, called Think Like a Freak from Stephen Levitt and Stephen Dubner. So let's talk about the authors a little bit. Stephen Levitt is an economist from the University of Chicago. Stephen Dubner is a journalist from the New York Times. And in 2005, they got together and they wrote a book called Freakonomics, and it sold over 5 million copies. 2009, they did a follow-up book called Super Freakonomics, and it sold 1.5 million copies. And the popularity of these books stemmed and brought on a lot of different things, including a radio program, a movie, and the #1 podcast, in addition to countless conversations. So you can kind of think of these two as rogue economists. What they do is they take what I would consider everyday type problems and questions that we have, and they put them through a scientific lens and really challenge our thoughts of conventional wisdom. A couple examples of the story they wrote. One was the cheating in sumo wrestling. Another one was a very controversial piece that talked about abortion and how it correlated to reduction in crime. They also did a piece on global warming, and they did a piece as well on economics and prostitution. So as you can see, it's all over the board, and there's plenty more. So the latest book, what they do is they address basically how to think like a freak. And this came about because they were receiving a lot of problems and a lot of questions, and they were asked to be basically resolved. So they took the teach a man to fish approach and came up with a bunch of tools so that we can sit there and answer these questions and problems on our own. So what does it mean to think like a freak? Well, first of all, you have to be creative. You also have to be willing to be different. And you have to be more willing to be neutral. So why is this hard for us to do? Well, it's hard because we're humans. And as humans, we have bias. So whether it's because the way you were brought up, maybe it's a situation in your social economic surroundings, your friends, education, religion, politics, all of these external factors influence the way that we think. And we like it because those biases help us make logic and structure out of the world we know. And it's very comfortable for us to think in those terms because we'd rather sit there and present it with a challenge or a problem, revert back to those biases, than spend the energy to rethink the way we think. And we see this all the time, right? Great example of this would be 24-hour news. Most people that watch 24-hour news, they essentially pick a belief or bias and find the programming that matches what they like. And if you've ever seen it, you know that in 24-hour news, there's a very small percentage where they actually talk about the news. And then there's a very large percentage of editorial where somebody and people explain to you what you just saw and how you should think about it and how you should interpret it. Now, how do we get around this? Data, information. The key is when presented with a challenge or a problem, go out and find information and data, but don't go out and find the information and data that just supports your beliefs you already have, very similar to the 24-hour news. Be very objective in the data that you seek out. Also, Levitt and Dubner talk about the key to knowledge is feedback. So seek out others with different opinions. It may not necessarily change what you believe at the end of the day, but it will change your understanding. Another key to thinking like a freak is the ability to say the 3 hardest words in the English language. And no, it's not I love you. Although I did have a roommate that bypassed the system because every time he was on the phone with his girlfriend, he would end the call and say olive juice, and I would just look at him and shake my head. The 3 hardest words are I don't know. So why is it hard for us to say I don't know? Well, saying I don't know takes a lot of pride and a lot of ego away, and it's very difficult. Also saying I don't know is really counter to the way our reward system has been structured, right? I mean, think about it. You're a kid in classroom, what's the first thing that happens? Who knows the answer? You want to be first, raise your hand. You're in a meeting room and a question or problem is presented, you want to have that, Johnny on the spot, have the answer on the tip of your tongue. Well, we all realize that it's impossible to sit there and know everything. Yet, why doesn't that stop us from saying, I don't know? I think Philip Tetlock, who is a psychology professor from the University of Pennsylvania, said it best, and it's simply because dogmatism. Now, the concept of I don't know believe it or not, I really didn't think about it too much until years ago in a movie I saw. So in 2002, Paramount Pictures, they released a film called The Sum of All Fears, and it was a book by Tom Clancy. And in that starred Ben Affleck, and also it starred Morgan Freeman. So I'm going to give you a quick setup. Ben Affleck was a low-level CIA analyst. Morgan Freeman was the CIA director. So the Russian president dies, and a new president comes in, and the US obviously has concerns about this new president. So the director Freeman reaches out to Affleck because Affleck happens to be very knowledgeable about this new president, and he's treating him as a subject matter expert. Now things accelerate. There's nuclear weapons involved and the possibility of a conflict. We're gonna watch a really short clip, actually 2 clips on this movie, and I want you to pay really close attention to what Morgan Freeman says during these clips. So let's go ahead and take a look.
You're about to breathe air that's way over your pay grade, so listen up. You're going to be asked for analysis and advice, so be goddamn sure you know what you're talking about before you give it. Don't be afraid to say you don't know. And choose your words carefully. Words have a habit of being turned into policy. Dr. Ryan.
Yes, sir.
What do you think?
Mr. President, conventional wisdom would suggest that Nemerov is playing the traditional Russian role. The aggressive, flex your muscles, dare the world to stop you. But Nemerov isn't conventional.
He walks like a hardliner, he talks like a hardliner.
Yes, sir, but with all due respect, I don't think he is one.
You just gassed the capital of another country, Doctor. With all due respect, you're wrong.
So what are we wasting our time for?
What if he didn't order the attack? What if Nemerov didn't order the attack? What if it was a rogue general or a splinter military unit frustrated they couldn't get the rest of the rebels out of the city?
Have you any reason to believe he didn't order it, or are you just floating this?
You don't know.
I don't think he did it, sir. I would bet he didn't do it.
So there you have it. You see the frustration and agony in Morgan Freeman's character and in his face. And what really struck, and the reason why I remember this and really struck a chord with me, is that fact of saying, I don't know. So, if you've ever seen the movie, Ben Affleck obviously spoke out, he happened to be right, which, it's a movie and sure, and the war didn't happen and we're all here to talk today. But the thing that really sat there and spoke to me is, if there was ever a situation that we were presented with that you feel you should speak out. Now here it is, right? There's a high escalation, we got possible military conflict happening, you're sitting in front of the most powerful person in the world, the President of the United States, along with his advisors, and basically he says, what do you think? Really? That's the time to showcase your talents, right? Explain what you think, but what was interesting was the CIA director was very, specific. If you don't know, say you don't know. But he couldn't help himself, right? We just can't help ourselves. And he didn't know. Even when the president was, hey, he basically said, do you know this for a fact, or are you just kind of floating this? Still could not help himself. So how can we sit there and change that, both professionally and personally? Well, one thing is very important is the ability to say, I don't know. But then go find out data and come back with the answer. That is crucial. Think about it in business. How many times will we sit there and we'll reference thoughts or feelings that we have, maybe from a company we worked at years ago, maybe from a situation that's no longer applicable, maybe from data that is outdated, as opposed to just saying, I don't know. Let me come back and find out. Why is that important? Because when you have the right data and the right information, you can make better decisions. Personally, it's also good because you'll be known as a person that if you don't know the answer says, I don't know, and will go get the answer. That really helps your credibility, especially when you do speak up and say, I do know the answer. Because they'll say, hey, if it's a situation where she says, I don't know, she'll get it, but when she talks, she knows what she's talking about. So let's talk about one last concept, and that is the ability to think like a child. So if any of you know me, you know that shouldn't be a problem. But this is a little bit different. So Levitt and Dubner talk about thinking like a child. And I see this in my own children, Grace and Bryce. When they sit there and they think and they're looking at problems and questions, they don't have what we talked about before. They don't have a lot of the biases and preconditioned ideas that they're just going to follow. They also have no problem saying, I don't know. They don't have quite the ego and pride that remains with most of us as we grow older. But what's really important that the authors call out is children have the ability to think small. Why is that important? Because even the biggest problems have smaller problems that are components of it. And so the ability to think small means you can dive in. Because without that, all we see is this huge problem in front of us. It's too daunting, and we just rather not even deal with it. So I get a good story. It involves my son Bryce, and I think it illustrates it. So a couple years back, we went and we were getting a desk, and went to the store and found this desk and brought it home. And you know, it's interesting, in the store it's nice and big, and I picked it up and it's a box about this size. Get it home, open it up. Instructions look like it was printed on a fax machine. You know, they're all crooked, got miscellaneous screws and washers and everything. And I'm not trying to say I'm the most handy person, but you know, I can work my way around a screwdriver and a wrench. So we start putting it together, right? Great father and son project, and we're doing a pretty good job. So we're getting near the end, and this desk, it has a desk piece here, but also has drawers that you can pull out. And when you pull out, it creates another desk surface, so it's kind of an L. So to sit there and connect it, there was a bracket on the drawer piece, and there was a back bracket to the main desk, and you just had to connect those two and put it together. So I put the screw through, I'm looking at the instructions, put the screw through, I'm getting the nut, and it was just very difficult for me to get the screwdriver in so I could sit there and tighten that nut. So I tried different angles, I'm trying different screwdrivers, and I realized the only thing I'm doing is really stripping this nut. So as I look at it, I'm thinking, I'm kind of talking to Bryce, and I'm like, yeah, this is a problem. I mean, I don't know, maybe we could take this side of the panel apart and, kind of go in from there, or, I just can't believe that they designed it this way. This doesn't even make sense. Maybe this thing is faulty. I don't even, take it back. I'm just kind of going through these gyrations. Bryce is just sitting there looking at it. He's like, Dad, why don't we just turn the screw around and screw it the other way? Kind of look at him, I'm like, all right. Where's my saddle? Because I'm about to get on my high horse right here, and I'm about to explain to you, you know what, Bryce? Sometimes you just can't take the easy way out. Sometimes it's, it's a little bit difficult, but you got to make it happen, and you got to do the right thing. But before I did that, I actually stopped, and I took a look. And if I connected the screw and bracket, or bolt, the way he was suggesting, it wasn't going to aesthetically do anything to the desk. It wasn't going to rub up against the desk and cause a problem. Matter of fact, it was going to work. And that's what we end up doing, and we end up completing the project. So what I learned from that is, while I was looking at this very big, like, I got to go to the hardware store, I got to buy more stuff, maybe disassemble part of it, I'm thinking all these things. Bryce thought very small about it. And he asked the right question and discovered the problem. The problem wasn't it was designed poorly. The problem wasn't that I didn't have the right tool. Although those may have been the case, the real problem was I needed to connect the bracket. And once that was done, the project was completed. So hopefully some of this has stimulated your thoughts and given you a desire to think like a freak. And I encourage you all to go out and get a copy of the book. But the one takeaway that I did have about this is, in order to think like a freak, you have to think. And that's hard. Think about it. How many times have you heard someone say it was a snap judgment? You never hear anybody say it was a snap thought. Why is that? Because thinking, it takes time. It takes analysis, and most importantly, it takes self-discipline. So I hope all of you would join the Freak Army, and feel free to get your freak on. Thank you.